well, I guess I don't really have to save any sort of time in the beginning of this to talk about housekeeping items, but I feel like I should, just in case, for the recording and all that fun stuff, and just to make sure I'm staying on top of my game. But my name is Cody Bernard, and I'm the head of marketing here at Close Factor. I'm joined by Keith Butler, who is the CRO at Observe, who I am super excited to talk to today about how to get back on track in the second half. Before we dive into some of the questions that we have for Keith, this will be recorded. I will send out a copy of the recording to everybody that registered. We'll also make it available on the closefactor.com website for those that want to travel there to get access to their copy. But outside of that, feel free to ask questions, dive in, all that type of fun stuff. We like to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have, a hot pressing question, just feel free to drop it in the chat or come off mute and you can ask it yourself. But outside of that, I want to hand things over to Keith for a quick introduction before we dive into the hot topic for today.
Awesome, Corey. Hey, cool. Well, yeah, that's me. I'm Keith. I'm at Observe, and I'm the president and CRO over here. And I've been banging around doing this amazing job for quite some time. So I'm excited to talk to you about it, Corey. It sounds cool. And I got to say two things. One, I love your company, by the way. Lean and I have been chatting for years now about this problem that you guys solve. So that's super cool. And yeah, we're excited to dig in.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the topic today is something that's been on the mind for not only just like sales leaders, but all go-to-market leaders, all business leaders for the most part, right? Like the first half of this year, probably, if you're like most businesses, did not go to plan. Just speaking to a few people that I know who are close friends as marketing leaders in the space, everybody was coming up short when it came to pipe gen, lead gen, revenue goals, whatever it might be. And that was just kind of the nature of the first half of the year. So I think a lot of people are looking for advice or looking to course correct in the second half of the year to set realistic expectations, but also potentially get back on track to hit their goals. So I wanted to talk to you about your experience as a sales leader over the past 10, 20 years and leading sales teams and everything that you've seen, so that we can give people here, something that they can take back and apply to what they're doing. So as we kind of dive into like the first topic of this conversation, I think when it comes down to hitting your goals, it comes down to setting the right goals initially, right? Like annual planning is something we're all super familiar with, takes place for some companies super early in Q4. Some companies are doing it, as the new year gets started, no matter where you kind of stand. Can you talk a little bit about goal setting from the get-go so that, we can kind of set the expectations around like why you might be in the position that you are today around being a little bit short of what you're looking to accomplish for the year?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, I think first you kind of we should probably just mention like, things are changing, and the economy is changing. And so like, I think at the core of what's going on is these changes. Now I remember selling in 2008 when things changed. And so, it shakes the company to the core. It forces you to ask some really important questions. And so, yeah, you can, as a sales leader, you got to be very attuned to what's happening and think about how to react. And so I think like, at the core of the problem, things have been in sales, especially in SaaS, a certain way for quite a lot of time. Meaning that people would buy and invest in technology because they believed in the promise. There was lots of money, and so you could make these investments. You could try a bunch of tools. You could kind of invest in kind of non-core spaces and go see what happens. When times get really tough, that changes dramatically. No longer are people looking for an ROI or a return on the investments they make. It's almost like I kind of call it a return on risk, an ROR. How do I eliminate risk out of my business and survive? And so like just if you look at it from a pure sales standpoint, selling changes. And so when selling changes, how people, It changes because what people are buying and how people are buying. That ripples all the way up to the plans you've made. The risks you've taken, the profile of people you're hiring, and everything to go and go at the market as you understand it. So, yeah, it makes complete sense. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that the sky is falling. In 2008, 9, 10, the selling environment was different, but it was really fruitful. I mean, if you made the right kinds of changes, you could really do well. So I want to start with kind of that recognition that, we've done this before. So it's not new. It's not like the sky's falling. It's, in fact, it can be a huge opportunity. You just got to be cognizant of it.
So when you're falling short a little bit, what do you think is the best way to go about figuring out, yes, like what the root cause of those issues is, but hey, we need to actually make some adjustments to our goals. So how do you go and try to like work with the leadership team to try to bring in this concept of adjusting the goals that you set in the first half of the year or for the entirety of the year, knowing that a lot of people are not up to making those changes?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. So let's kind of start at the top. I think the first thing you gotta be aware of or recognize when you want to make change is that, building a company, building a sales team, running an organization, growing fast, doing, the things we do in this business. These are complex systems. So, you can, in complex systems, you got to make sure, like if you make change, what change how that change is going to impact. If you panic, you can make changes that actually you think make sense at the time, but actually have devastating effects on your business. So you got to be super careful about that. And I'll give you a quick analogy. I'm really into systems thinking. So like, for example, I don't know, you've probably, an old systems thinking analogy is you're in a hotel room, and a lot of us sellers travel a lot. So this will ring. You get up in the morning, you go turn on the shower, and hold on a sec. I'm okay, Christy. You turn on the shower, and you've been in a lot of hotel rooms, so you turn the shower to the place where you think you're going to get warm water, and that's from your experience, right? And then like time goes on, and the water's still cold. It goes past the normal time you think it's going to take. And so what do? You crank the knob to hot, right? And then all of a sudden you get in, you jump in the shower, and about a minute later, you're exiting the shower super quick because it's too hot. And then you're turning it down because, oh my gosh, I'm scalded. And then you turn it down and now it's too cold. Right. And so you spend like a lot of time, 10 minutes, kind of adjusting the thing, getting it right until it kind of like goes back. But if you just would have left it, if you just would have used your experience and turned it to the place and just kind of left it for a while, it probably would have been fine. Okay. And so the thing is that like, I think building a sales organization and making these corrections as things change around you are somewhat the same. You gotta kind of think through, is this a change I make it's going to like have a big impact, or maybe I should just keep it the same if I don't know, because some things just take time. So if I go and make changes like, well, I'm going to go hire a different profile of person, okay, to attack the second half. Well, that change is going to take a year to kick in, right? Sure, I can go tweak a comp plan. I can create spiffs. I can go with marketing and go create some very pointed things to generate certain types of pipeline. I can do those types of things because I know if I turn the dial, they'll have kind of in-quarter impact to what I do. So I don't know if as kind of a general thing, does that make sense, Corey? That's kind of how I would start, is just kind of like map them out. Map out the kind of change you can make fast, and the kind of change that if you make will have its slow impact, and therefore you got to be really careful of those things.
Yeah, I think there's like this idea around like small tactical changes that you can apply now that will move the needle, but there's also this idea around sticking to your long-term vision and the big bets that you did set out to achieve and that will take time, and not compromising, right? Like I think you do need to be able to balance both. I think in my experience, one company that I used to work at, it was always both, right? Like you have option A, option B. It's always both option A and option B, and you need to find ways to make that happen. And I think that that's an interesting way to think, because all of us are always looking for trade-offs or the easy way out, right? Like you might want to readjust a goal, or you might want to deprioritize this initiative, or you might want to set out with this new project that you think is going to be, game changing for your business. But at the same time, you need to look at the entirety of what you have on your plate, and you need to figure out, where does this fit in? Is this something that's going to be, able to be tackled within the first, few weeks of the quarter, the first few weeks of the month, or whatever it might be? Or is this something that is more longer term that we need to really think about and how we allocate resources to? So 100%, on board with that. Now, I like the shower analogy because, it's not for probably what you might think. Like, I actually just wish that they had digital like now, because like I just want to know the temperature that I like versus having to try to move the needle, a million different times. I think that would actually go a long way. I feel like I've only seen that once, but that's neither here nor there. But
yeah, that's not a problem I can solve for you, Corey.
yeah. But I think one of the things that you brought up is important, where it's all about goal setting. And, if you do have this gap, there's this idea that starts to kind of like take place internally around, are we on the right track? Are we still, on target, or is there anything to really worry about? So I think when it comes to the sales team specifically, but even just like the overall company, when it comes to either sticking with the goals that you set out for the to accomplish at the start of the year, or if you're just readjusting those goals, maybe you're bringing them down a little bit. How do you think about maintaining morale across the team to make sure that everybody is still on the same track? Everybody is still, rah, hell bent on achieving a goal because they believe in what the leadership team is telling them in regards to the things that we are going to do are going to help us achieve, X, Y, Z. So as a sales leader, how do you keep your team focused and keep morale high?
I think that there's no secret there. I think the first thing comes to mind is just clarity, right? Is when you change goals at an organizational level on the bigger company, that's the bigger team and the bigger company you're running, the more challenging clarity becomes. Meaning, like, do people really understand what we're doing and why we're doing it? So if tough times mean you have to replan, right? Those types of fear that can ripple through an organization, and people come up with their own conclusions as to why that's happening. And maybe the reality is we just need to replan because we want the investment that's been made in us to last longer than it will at our current burn rate. And therefore, like, we need to kind of like change the way we're looking at the growth of our business. But I think, like, just first of all, like, just making sure and giving people time and space to understand that. That's not just an executive discussion. That's a discussion for anyone who is interested in the company and understanding those types of things. So I think that's it. Like, just giving a knee-jerk reaction, like, you can lower quota, for example, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, well, I've lowered quota. Now everyone should be good. Okay. And the way that can reverberate down to the team is like, I'm in a total panic because my company doesn't think I can sell as much as I could yesterday. And so people come up with their own rationalizations and their own emotional response to things you do. In your head, you're thinking, oh, it's great. I just gave you a way better way to make your quota. So I think, but those things are good. So I think communication, just a lot of communication around it is great. I think one other thing, like, that always helps me is, like, when things change, the skills required change a little bit. So when if I'm selling in a hot environment, right, I've noticed this over the past bunch of years, is that sellers de-emphasize, for example, a business case. Building a business case. The customer says they don't need it. They got lots of money. It's an internal process. Don't worry about it. Your champion kind of gets armed and enabled, and off they go, and they come back with a PO. Well, that happens for a few years, and you didn't live through 2008. Maybe you convince yourself that you don't need to do a business case. Okay, but in tough times, like, a business case actually becomes paramount to the decision, right? In many ways, like, as you know, the CFO sometimes gets involved in a decision where they weren't really involved in the decision before. I had the budget I could spend. But clarity of the value proposition around, like, tying specific, you know, capabilities you need to solve a business problem and to get to that outcome become way more important. Okay, so those small changes have a huge impact. Okay, now, you can communicate, okay, we're gonna you know, replan and go do these things. However, there's tactical things we need to do in order to kind of like take advantage of this new environment that we're in. And those are two really good examples. So let's like double down on building really good hard dollar cost reduction business cases that align to what the company's doing. And that's a skill that a lot of young sellers frankly don't have. Okay, getting back to really tight technical requirements building and mapping, right in the detail. You know, we didn't have to do that as much in the past, and maybe you got away with it, but you ain't getting away with it anymore. So so my point is like, is basically, but those are skills that can be taught. Okay, and so being really cognizant of like mapping all the way from like, what's the goal change that we're going to make, all the way down to what skills do reps and SCs and marketing people all need in order to take advantage of this new opportunity is something that I try not to forget.
Yeah, I think that just going back to, I think one of the first things that you said around reps and, you know, saying, hey, we might want to replan, I can lower quota. And, you know, now the company might not think that I'm capable of hitting quota. I think there's the alternative too, which is I might just maintain the same mindset I have today because, you know, I have a lower quota to hit, in which case that's not helping anybody. But I think on the other side of it, what you were just mentioning too, is how to like kind of keep morale high or increase the interest level of everybody on the team to still march towards that same goal, is to show that you're investing back in them. So, hey, you know, we're going to be reinvesting training on how to build a true business case, right? Because we know that that's paramount to closing a deal today versus you might not have needed that, you know, 6, 12, 18 months ago when software was flying off the shelves, whoever was looking to buy it, right? So having kind of like those different levels, being able to reinvest back into your team, even when times are tough, should help increase the spirits of everybody involved, and not only just the sales team, but also the company itself. So I think I wanted to touch on that piece because I think that's incredibly important, is this idea around internal marketing. And I think it's everybody's job at the company to help out with marketing, right? Like, yes, externally, but also internally. So when you have these goals and if things are going great or even things aren't going well, maintaining that transparency across the organization for not only people who are interested in it, but I think making it more of a mandate to truly understand the business and the financials and everything that's going on only helps in the long run, because people understand why there might be a surplus, right, in some area or just a gap in another area. And I think it provides a level of clarity where people aren't necessarily scared or spooked in certain situations, like, you know, what we were dealing with in the first half of the year, which was just a ton of uncertainty around budget cuts and, you know, tech consolidation and all that, you know, stuff that was taking place and still taking place right now. So I think that's just like a pretty key piece to all of this, is just like this internal marketing piece and keeping everybody on the same page, but giving them every piece of information to basically come to conclusions themselves, but obviously kind of like pointing them in the right direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I don't really believe in internal marketing. My favorite book remains to this day, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play. And one of the core principles of that book is in the title. You give, you know, really smart people lots of information and give them a goal that we can go attack together and get them bought in, and they decide whether they want to come along on the journey. Retention of great people isn't a trick. It's not a story. It's alignment to a very important goal that everyone shares and believes in, and then we go get it together. And so maybe it's an opportunity. Maybe it's an opportunity to kind of like realign on what are we really trying to do here, and is this a place that you want to invest in? Can you get excited? Your legs swing out of bed every morning, excited to come and do this job, because it's a gift to be able to do what we do. So yeah, but I guess my point is like, I don't tell stories so good. I try to get to the real facts and let people make their own decisions.
For sure. We do have a question that came through. Retraining and reskilling takes time. Should we incorporate that extra time into our goal setting process? Question mark. What if that makes it more of a drastic reset in goals?
Well, I guess you're right. In one way, training can be a long term. It can be a thing that in the system that takes a long time to take effect. I actually believe, though, that's how and what you're delivering is training. I believe training is one of the things you can do to affect Q3 as we get ready to, for us anyway, go into Q3. It's something you can have immediate impact on if you get it right. Okay, if you're looking, I'll talk maybe a little bit about like figuring out how to get it right. Okay, but just for the point, if you get the training right on the thing that needs to happen to move the needle, that's a skill that you can boil down to bite-sized chunks that people can digest and go try, or your leaders can kind of understand and teach and go into the field immediately with, you can have an immediate impact to productivity with training. It's a superpower, training. If you train on like big concepts that are, that take years to adapt, then you're right. Then training can be that's kind of an ongoing thing for long-term strategy. But tactical training, I believe heavily in. I can give you a couple examples, and if that makes sense.
Yeah, would love the examples.
Okay, well, one thing I do is I'm very close to our conversion rates in the sales motion. Okay, so like, and what I mean by that is like how many meetings do we generate? How do those meetings convert from like meetings to interest, and then from like interest to a qualified sales cycle, for example, and then into technical validations or POCs down the road. So we have a stage gate process with exit criteria, and we measure and understand. Even though we're small, we pay a lot of attention to these conversions. Now, one thing that's going to change as the economy changes is your conversions will probably change. Those rates change. For example, like before, when you didn't need a business case, maybe you had a really high conversion rate on like from POC to close, and now it's starting to change. And one of the reasons it may be changing is because the business case is in front and center in the campaign. So even though the technology is cool, you're not the business people don't understand the impact, and therefore the deal dies. Okay. You can see that in your business. You could see it in conversion rates as you can to understand an indication of the problem. So you can train very specifically there. You can teach them how to build it, when to build it, questions to ask, give them templates to help them quantify things, do all kinds of very short kind of pertinent things, set new goals around it. Put some spiffs in place around building business cases. Maybe instead of juicing the comp plan, you're going to spiff business cases. When you deliver a great business case, you're going to get something. And we're going to do that now. You build it into your operating rhythm, you build it into your forecast call, and all of a sudden, like in a matter of days and weeks, you have an organization kind of focused on making these changes in the cycles that they're in today. That's how you can use training like a secret weapon. But in order to do it, I believe you gotta make that call right. Okay, so it goes back to my shower analogy. If I go and train people on deep domain knowledge, for example, and hope that their knowledge is going to like prove it over time, going to help them be better salespeople of Observe, then the question is correct. Like that will take time. That could take 6 months to really kind of work its way through the system. So it depends on the topic. So I believe you got to be really in tune with what's happening in the business and kind of be very tactical about those training efforts.
No, I like that. And I think that's something I think everybody can kind of resonate with, is this idea around it's all a math equation at the end of the day, right? Like, as much as we don't really want to believe that that's the case and that there's like some, magic taking place, but all of it kind of fits into this math equation around inputs and outputs, and being able to kind of understand where the levers are within those conversion rates, I think is very important, and knowing where you can adjust and move the needle. I like all those examples. I want to quickly not pivot, because I think this is like an adjacent topic to what you were just talking about. And it's this idea around like finding the root cause of like what might be going wrong, like within your existing engine. And I think you kind of touched on it, like knowing like the conversion rates in and out, right? Once you realize that something isn't necessarily going to plan, how do you go and think about getting to the bottom of what the root cause is? Like, where are the first places that you look, and kind of how do you get to that understanding that, hey, actually, we're not on pace or on track or going down the right path?
Well, let's start in the data. The data is the easiest place to start because it's clear, right? So using data as a way, like, this is one way you guys help us, is to give us data on like our ICP, so we can kind of understand not just who to target, but how is it going? How is our success? How are we being successful against the decisions we made on our ICP? And should we make changes to those things? Conversion rates are huge. We talked about it a little bit, but even like just, kind of in and out of early stage pipeline, in and out of discovery, is hugely important. So that's where I start. Okay, that's where I start. I look at the forecast. I look at the qualification. I look at kind of that. I look at the numbers. What kind of deals are happening? Are there big deals happening? Are we doing less logos and more big deals, or more logos and less deals? And has it changed? I'd say the important thing is change, right? You're looking for things in the data that shows change, and it's different in every business. I can't say in your business it's going to be stage 3 to stage 4 is the most important. In mine, it's stage 2. It's the early stuff. It's kind of like, how are we building problems and mapping technical criteria to those problems? And are we doing that like early on, so our champions are armed to go do things? That's where we spend most of our time. So in and out of that stage, I can glean a lot. So that's where I'd start, I guess, is the data. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think that's the first place you kind of should start, because obviously you want to ground all your decision making in data. What is some of like the qualitative aspects that you would look into? Like, I mean, on the marketing side, we always talk about like campaigns, right? Like, we look at campaign performance. We might be testing different messaging, different personas, we have different plays that we'll run. And I think like that's more of like probably at the operator level, somebody that's actually like, kickstarting the campaign. So it might not necessarily be at your level, but is that something that you look into, or do you have like your team look into those other more like qualitative elements around, the messaging that we're using, the people that we're going after, making sure that we're multi-threading deals and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So from a marketing standpoint, just take it a demand gen angle. Kristen, our VP marketing, we track, the conversion of all our effort into kind of qualified meetings that occur, right? And we kind of know each stream of activity that flows into qualified meetings. And so that's not revolutionary. That's pretty. I'd say the big difference here is one of the things we do is we don't focus on MQLs. And marketing's opinion of the meetings. We focus on the output, the quality of the output of the meetings we generate. And so like it has definitely changed. People are interested in different parts of our value proposition than they were before, and we're really attuned to that. It's kind of in the data. The other place it's in is like we use Gong pretty extensively, so it's actually in the meetings. And this is less quantitative. It's more using your gut and your understanding of your business to kind of think about and understand what you're hearing. And so that is a huge tool for me. Sometimes I'll just put the data away and I'll just kind of spend a bunch of time in meetings and listen to what objections are coming up, what things are landing and what things aren't landing. And those are much more qualitative because I've developed a pretty good ear for our business. And so like I do it intentionally to kind of like get out of the data and just kind of tell them, figure out what my gut says.
Yeah, I think that's where my favorite product out there, definitely Gong. Listening to Gong calls, you can learn just so much. Cool. So I want to slightly move into the last portion of this, which I think is more about what I think people are hoping to get out of this conversation, which is more about small tactical changes that people can look to implement now. Like obviously we talked about balancing short-term versus long-term, and always, sticking true to what you set out to achieve. But what are some things that you think some people can look into from a tactical standpoint that they can implement over the next few weeks, the coming months, to set them up to close the gap that they might have, or to even double down and to accelerate on, maybe a surplus in pipeline and revenue that they were able to generate in the first half?
Sure. Okay. So, but, as precursors, like we got to be clear on the goal we're changing, right? So just to go back to that, once we've done that and we've mapped it out, there's a bunch of stuff that we can do kind of short term. One is you can go and get, some very impactful comp spiffs or changing comp plan or kind of like short-term things that you can do to reward people for very specific things that you want them to do. Now that can be tricky because you can't do that on your own. You got to go and you got to get your CEO and maybe even the board kind of aligned to go spend a bunch of money, especially when spending money isn't kind of the most exciting thing to do at the moment. So that can be tricky, I guess. But I want to spend just a sec on that one. If you, I think it's a bit of a misnomer. If you look back, if you finish the year and you hit your goals, and finance, is happy with the financial performance of the company, how does the company look compared to how does it look if you continue to underachieve? At the end of that same period? Forget about the number. The number could be exactly the same because it could be about the plan. It could be about the expectation. And so like, I urge, to take that seriously, because setting a plan that we know everyone can overachieve, that it will build excitement, it'll get everyone aligned, and bring some excitement back to this really cool company without everyone focusing on like missing the goal by certain percentages, has a huge impact in the momentum of the company. Forget about the sales team. And I think that's worth it. So what is that worth? I don't know. That's up to you, but like it's typically not thought of. It's typically thought of as another expense. And I believe like investing there can be huge. Just to get people excited, get them more creative, get their legs swinging out of bed with a little more energy in the morning, knowing that they're a part of something still pretty special here. And it doesn't take that much. So I would say that's a big one. But if you're going to do it, be specific about what you're going to pay for. Pay for the activity that you want to generate. Don't pay for things that you don't necessarily need, like doing multi-year big deals, for example, and paying a lot more commission on those deals, which I'm not sure those deals are exactly what drives valuation for your company in the short term. So what about just leaning heavily into new logos in the right place? Leaning heavily into activities that you want, like we talked about before, building business cases. What about excellent POCs that go off without a hitch because you spent a lot of time doing criteria? What about spiffing things in the business? What about for marketing, creating amazing high quality leads, forgetting about volume for a second, getting back to quality? That type of stuff that can be hugely impactful all around comp. Don't just have fun. Don't just invest in like fun without purpose. Winning is fun. Losing sucks. And if you're going out for great dinners and you're losing, the food tastes like shit. So like win first. That's my thing. Let's win together. Then we can celebrate. Okay, so don't, I know, my thing is, I don't want to spruce up the company picnic if I'm not winning. I want to win. Okay, and I believe that the people that I recruit and that come to this company because Jeremy's leadership want to win, and so we do that. Anyway, I'm getting on a soapbox now.
No, I think that's great advice. I think getting everybody kind of on the same page is kind of like the core purpose of this entire conversation today, because I think, I mean, personally, when I've seen in my experience where companies start to, fall short of what they're looking to accomplish, is because everybody's not on the same page, right? Like you might not have hit your pipeline or revenue goal because you might have some people who aren't bought in. You have some people who might be underperforming. You have some people that might have set the goal too high. It's never one person's fault. It's just the fact that some people or some parts of the organization are operating independently, or just, set off to achieve something that might be beneficial for them. So I think it all is kind of rooted in this idea of like, you have to win together. And I think like a lot of that is sometimes lost, especially like in today's world where a lot of us are remote. A lot of us are not having face-to-face interaction with people. It is easy to lose yourself. It's easy to lose the identity of who you are working with and what you're a part of. So I think I lastly want to say thank you for this.
That's the essence of leadership,
Yeah. I am going to open it up just for any questions that, anybody has. Tim, Lena, Odette, anybody. I mean, I've asked a bunch of questions. If you have anything, feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute. And we'll make sure that we can get them answered. But otherwise, I just wanted to say thank you, Keith. This was awesome. I've learned a ton, especially just coming from a marketing leader myself, like knowing how you think and how you operate and how you set your expectations with the people and your peers over in marketing. I think that's something that I'm going to take away from this. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, totally. I'd be remiss if I didn't make a quick plug though. At Observe, we have, what I call a gotta have technology. It means you can't decide in times that you don't want to do observability. It's got to happen to run a service. And so, we hired great people here. We're not having this problem we're really talking about. In fact, we're growing like crazy over here. And I think it's really because we've aligned our value prop very tightly to those elements that people are very interested in today and need in order to run their business. So if that's interesting, please reach out to my amazing team, and we're hiring in pretty much all areas.
For sure. And within that, you also highlighted one other piece that's important for everybody to figure out, whoever listens and watches this call. How do you make your technology must-have technology? How do you communicate that to your buyers is kind of the ultimate question that I think we're all kind of longing to answer for our respective companies. So I will end it.
Battery's dying and I better plug in or I'm not going to lose it. Okay, cool.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to end it here. Thank you everybody for joining. And thank you so much, Keith, for hitting us with all your knowledge. And we really appreciate it and value.
Good luck with it. Yeah, right. Thanks. Really appreciate the time. It was fun. It was cool. Thanks, Lena. Love your company.
You.
All right.